Okay, I'd now like to introduce our second speaker for tonight, who is Shennae Searle. So Shennae comes from Peninsula Grammar, where she's the STEM and Makerspace Integrator. She's got 16 years of teaching experience across primary and secondary in public education as well as independent sector. She's been the education consultant at Mensa, Victoria, for the past 5 years. She's a director at Exceptional Education and is currently a doctoral student focusing on how Australian primary school teachers can better engage primary schools in STEM. So a very busy person, so thanks for giving us the time to come out tonight.
Thank you. So 3 years ago, I was working in gifted education, and I would get groups of students across a variety of schools. We'd look at their data and I'd create gifted and extension programs for them. And I would often get the same band of children come across working in multiple areas of, 2 to 3 years ahead in maths, literacy, numeracy, thinking skills. And I had a brilliant band of girls, and I loved seeing their names pop up until I got to science. And then I got to the science results, and the science test, to be honest, wasn't really that difficult. You probably could have reasoned your way through most of it, and I had one girl in the top 15. And I had to ask myself, what is going on? Where are all my bright girls when it comes to science? So I begged to get a group of these girls together. So I took the girls from position 15 down to position 30, whatever, and we began a pilot program. And I was working through, I was showing them role models, and I still wasn't hitting the mark. And then I finally had my light bulb moment, and it came from looking in the community, and it was about the same time the Monash Children's Hospital was being built. And I said to the girls, oh, look, girls, there's a new children's hospital, and we talked about who might go there and how great it is for the community. And my thought was, they haven't finished building, why don't we use this as a learning opportunity? So I said, girls, they don't have a ramp yet at the hospital. Now, they took me very literally, and they said, what? This is an outrage. We live in Melbourne. It's Monash Hospital. How could they not have a ramp, Miss Searle? These children are sick. And I saw this passion come out of the girls that I had never seen before, and I knew I had hit the mark with them. So what happened when we began this, our very first empathy project? Well, the teamwork was incredible. I had about 15 girls, and they started off in groups of 4 or 5. But what I noticed was the team, they didn't go and work on what they wanted to work on. They worked on what was best for the team. So I had girls go off and testing the gradients of the ramp to get the exact right slope for the wheelchairs for the people going up. I had a girl go home and download all the Australian building standards, so we knew exactly what height to have the handrails. We had girls make makeshift wheelchairs and gurneys so they knew how big the turning circle would have to be. All of these things came from the girls. I didn't have to prompt any of it. They were concerned for the nurses who would be walking up and down the ramps all day. They wanted it to be aesthetically pleasing for the poor children who were in there. But the thing that really surprised me that I hadn't anticipated was that I began with 5 groups. And as the groups evolved and as the project evolved, I had girls who, in discussion together, would say, you know what, our project isn't looking as good as theirs. And they were happy to abandon their project for the greater good. And they would go and join one of the other teams where they were really warmly welcomed. And we ended up having one large team all working together. And I'd finally found that missing link, which is all of these things on the board that we know. It's a connection to the community, it's having altruistic outcomes, it's authentic, and it's having a community goal. So one thing I wanted to share with you is, this is from Stanford, and this is one design process that I've used in both primary schools and high schools. And you'll notice the first one starts with empathy. And when we start with empathy, I find that the children are really self-motivating, engaged, self-learning. They're going off and learning things. And it's so funny because in this day and age, I feel like more than ever, they really want to feel connected to something. It's not a perfect model, it's just one model. We changed test into test and improve, which helped with their articulating their critical thinking, and we also added in a reflection stage. So as you can see, it can be done with primary school children. We used it with year 1s and just changed the wording to be a little bit easier. So it can be done in sketchbooks. Our year 8s here work on a OneNote, so their journey goes through a whole portfolio of what they can see, or you can do it, we used a Hacker Toy empathy project as a whole class project. Now, everybody loves the prototype stage. This is some of our beginning robotics lesson, and we all want to get to the end goal because it's super, super fun. The thing that we're finding today, though, is we're having an issue with failure. And we're having an issue that if we don't get something right the first time, then we've had a failure, which isn't true. So we spent a lot of time breaking down that if you can find 17 different ways to do something, that's your learning, and that's showing you being critical and reflective, like these unicorns who didn't quite work well the first time. So test became test and improve. So I do recommend spending time changing their mind about failure, and one of my students coined the term a failurebration. So every time something went wrong, we had a bit of a celebration about it. It wasn't seen as a negative thing. So this is where their critical thinking came in, and as a teacher, there's not more I could ask for. Every time they ran their prototype, they would say, right, first change or first test that we did, my motor wasn't working. So what did you do? I went back and I tested the connections. Second time I went through, my prototype fell over. Okay, we went back and worked on the balance. Third time, fourth time, fifth time. So we've got all of this evidence showing their thinking, how they're reflecting and how they're growing each time throughout their project. So what type of learning opportunities are teachers currently providing? Well, for the most part, they're real world, human-centred, connected to a cause, and giving the children a reason to challenge themselves. So one project that we were involved in this year is called the Enable Project, and Enable's a worldwide non-for-profit organisation, and they actually measure up people who have either no hand or a hand with a deformity, and they will send you the 3D printing specs, and you can actually 3D print it at your school. It cost us about $7 to 3D print we called it a bionic hand, and we hope that that will then go out to a person. So we began with all of the students. We had a guest speaker come in, so we had a hand therapist come in and really engage the children in the start of the project. From a STEM perspective, it covered obviously our science, anatomy, engineering, technology certainly. So all the children started off with their cardboard prototype hands. Then they were able to download and 3D print a hand that we had made for them. And then they went on to design and 3D print their own bionic hands. Now you can imagine as children, you possibly don't want your hand to look like everybody else. So we had Wolverine and Hulk and all of these things, and they could then empathise and think, well, this is going off to a child somewhere in the world and we're making a difference, and it cost us $7 and we could 3D print this at school. It was a very powerful project. So how are students responding? Amazingly well. We're having requests for students to come into STEM classes. We can't run enough STEM classes. Their parents are requesting for them to come into our classes. They're finding their voice and they're finding their passion, which is what I love, and it more represents a real world environment. When they go out into the real world, it's important that they're doing something that they love, but they don't have to be good at everything. But if they can find their passion, they can certainly contribute in a meaningful way. We've had high levels of engagement and participation. They're much more able to demonstrate and articulate their critical and creative thinking. And this is a bit of a personal one, but I love that we are equipping them to be the next custodians of the earth. They're actually realising that although they're children, they're going to be in charge very soon, and they can make a difference about sustainability and the world and how the world runs, which is huge when you're 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or 11 or 12. How are we doing this? It's not easy, I'm going to be honest. Teachers who are teaching STEM, there's a lot of ongoing learning because technology changes every day. I think that's a big thing that you have to accept when you're a STEM teacher, is the first thing you have to do is say, I certainly don't know everything and I'm going to learn a lot from my students, which I do on a daily basis. We have to articulate and demonstrate the thinking. So children don't always know how to think, we have to explicitly teach it, and there are a lot of really good design models that you can use. We have to think on our feet and we have to be adaptable. Some of the best lessons come from when we throw away the plan we had that day. Like somebody lost the end for their stylus pen. So we had about 5 different prototypes of how you could reuse items in the classroom, such as rubbers and lead pencils, to create a new stylus pen. We have to walk the talk. We have to get in there with the kids and we have to let them see us fail. We have to let them see us going through that testing and improvement stage, and finding inspiration close at hand. So if you haven't seen the BBC TV show The Big Life Fix, I would recommend that. They do a beautiful job. And we've all heard they can't be what they can't see. So it really is a matter of really passionate people getting in there with the children. Some of the recent empathy projects we've done this year have all come from the students. So our hospital gown project started when somebody went to hospital with a broken arm, talked about how the gowns were very scrunchy and itchy and not at all pleasant. You didn't have any dignity at the back. And then the children started talking about, oh, my grandma or my mother. And so now we've got children who are designing different kind of hospital gowns. We've got the boomerang bags. We've done Hacker Toy, where we took toys from the Salvation Army shop. We put technology in them and then we gave them to children in a hospital. There's a lot of hospital children here, I'm just realising, isn't there? Wearable tech, beginning robotics, flying robot school. We had a group of girls go and get their pilot licence for their drones. And when they came back from that day, we gave them sticky notes and said, think of how many future jobs you could have by using a drone. And they came up with over 100 different ways to make money out of using a drone. It's my retirement fund. So just going back to that first group of girls, I had them for about a term and a half. And in that time, 11 out of my 15 girls, when retested, came in the top 15%. Which was wonderful, and I'd love to claim it was all my brilliant teaching, but it was really just engaging the girls and letting them see that you are bright girls, you can think your way through this. That was my mantra throughout the whole unit. I just wanted to quickly share, a lot of people ask about the crime scene investigation. I had girls who were obsessed with all this CSI, Miami and those things. So I created a CSI and it was a really fun community activity. Although it was only grade 5s and 6s involved, we had to go and fingerprint the prep teachers and the sport teachers. So the whole school was involved. We had some dinosaurs stolen and other things out of the STEM room. It was very official. They did their fingerprinting. The highlight of the day was absolutely when our prep teacher was arrested. She was identified as the culprit, and without any context at all, the prep children went home to their parents and said, "Mum, my prep teacher got arrested today by the police for stealing." And that was all they said. So that was a bit of a highlight. Community engagement is another big one. There was a big thing on the internet probably last year about the watermelon challenge. So we did it with water balloons. We got it through the school. We put rubber bands so the preps could do this. And our grade 5s and 6s set up the water balloon challenge at lunchtime. Lunchtime on a Friday, so the teachers were happy to let the classes stay out afterwards. We had parents come down. We had the microphone going. We had a DJ. We had guesses. And I'll just leave you on this one.
Tell no lies, I ain't gonna apologize.
So we had children making predictions
you know exactly who I am.
Throughout the day.
Taking everything I want, don't believe me, then just watch. Spinning like the earth is mine, moving like I own this time. Can't stop me now.
So it's a very quick 10 minutes today, but please get in touch because I think as STEM teachers, the best thing we can do is share our resources and collaborate together. So thank you very much for your time.